Welcome to the Strategy Investment Podcast with Brett Warner. Brett is a successful entrepreneur and investor, and he and his team have sold over $1 billion in real estate. That's exactly what this show is about, investing, real estate, and family finance. Hey, my name is Jason. I'm your co-host. I'm going to be here asking your questions and learning along with you today. And whether you're listening on the podcast or watching online, we're glad that you are here. And today's episode is about leveraging commercial real estate. Now, Brett, we talked a bunch about this coming week, and I think one of the first questions, at least in my head, is how do you advise business owners to really get the most out of commercial real estate?
Business owners for commercial real estate, it really kind of depends on where that business owner is at in their life, and then it depends on what they want to do. And so what I have found is that if you have a successful business, then it's easy for me to give advice. If the business is broke, you probably shouldn't get real estate.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then I would say that if you were thinking about growing, often I find people that have a company like, I want to have more people. And I'm like, well, then why would you get a place that's very small? You want to dream big, at least get a place for 6 people. And so I first want to figure out where that client or that person's at.
I love that. I love it. And actually, you touched on something there that I definitely want to talk more about, is about fit. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that we actually have an in-studio guest today. We've got Jason Parker from Parker Financial here along with us today, and a great Kitsap business. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for sitting with us today. And I just want to start off by saying, hey, tell us about Parker Financial, your business, where it comes from, the history a little bit.
Yeah, so Parker Financial is an independent, fee-based, registered investment advisory firm. And we specialize in, the last several years, helping people make a transition into retirement and then walking life with them as they make their way through retirement. Gotcha. Well, again, thanks for being here. And one of the reasons that you're here, this is not a surprise. We tried to prepare you as best as possible for what this experience is going to be like. But one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on the show, Jason, is because I know that within, I guess, what has it been the last, 3-5 years, you just bought a piece of commercial real estate for your business. I did.
Yeah. How long ago was it?
3 years ago now.
Yeah, 3 years.
2.5 years.
So, Brett, and I'm turning to you because I know you guys you kind of go back a ways, and I just wanted to almost like talk through this as a case study. Now, Jason, did you approach Brett for advice? Like, when did those wheels start turning from a commercial real estate standpoint?
Well, the wheels were turning for a while. It happened out of necessity more than I wasn't looking for an investment opportunity as much. I just needed more space. Our business was growing. We were in 1,200 square feet. I had been in business for 11 years, and the business was very successful and continuing to grow and continuing to get bigger, and we were hiring more people, and we were kind of stuck. We couldn't grow anymore because we just didn't have the space. So initially, I was just looking to lease a new space, and so that's what I started doing. I knew that I needed a minimum of 2,500 square feet. And I just went around looking at different places in Paulsbo and Silverdale that were 2,500 square feet business locations that I could lease.
Gotcha. Now, you brought this guy, Brett Warner, into the picture at some point. Tell me about that moment.
Warner's always in the picture. Brett's a good friend of mine, and so he is the trusted person I go to when I need advice on real estate. So Brett sold us he sold our last house, our primary residence. He helped us buy the house that we're living in now. And whenever I have a real estate question, strategy real estate, Brett Warner's my go-to person. He and I spent a lot of time together just walking and having fun and talking, and I was sharing with him what I was looking for. And I actually, the way that the real estate opportunity came about, because I was looking at all these different leases, I told my current landlord that I was looking to move.
Right.
And he said, well, have you ever thought about buying a building? He had a building for sale. And I knew the building that he was referencing, but I had looked at it online, and I thought to myself, boy, I don't want to spend that much money for a building. Mm-hmm. And it was after the initial conversation that I had with him, and he said, well, Jason, there's 2 tenants in that building that are paying rent. They've been long-term tenants. Have you factored in the cash flow that's coming from the building already? And I hadn't. And so when I started putting pen to paper and I started talking with Warner, I started realizing, wow, this really looks like a good opportunity. This looks like something I need to do, not that I need to capture right away.
Yeah, it changed things. Okay, now Brett, recap the same story. It sounds like when you just started by saying, "Hey, fit." I heard Jason say that.
I think as
There were a couple
Jason
things.
said, and I don't mean to jump in.
No, go ahead. That's it. Yeah.
Jason was saying that we've been friends. I mean, coming up on good friends for 7 years, and we've spent a lot of time together. And I'd say we're walking life together. And as we walk life together, I bounce things off of him. He understands things that I don't, especially more towards the retirements and maybe how to preserve. I could be some seen as more risky, and so it's great to talk to somebody that really knows. Works with people that are more in a fixed income kind of retirement situation. And then, as we talked about how we're working on things, how we enjoy our families, how we learn to hike, and I think this was a little before we started hiking a lot, but we just would enjoy our lunches together, whatever. And then he came to me one day and said, "Hey, I have this opportunity." And so I wasn't even like me really selling. We're just walking life. And he says, I trust you, Brett, and I want your advice. And I'm like, "Well, you don't need me." But he said, "I want your advice." And that's when I love it, because that means he really, really trusts me. And he could have done it without me. But I think going through it, he felt a little more assured when he'd have questions, or there was a thing or two in there, maybe the elevator he wasn't certain about. And I'm like, "Hey, it's not the end of the world." And it's time to be able to bounce things off of somebody that's seen stuff and done that. And I also knew the advantages that he'd have, because his company was doing well by owning that, being able to have the tax deductions that he did not see in these things. And I kind of was explaining some of that to you. He knew about it, but it's just like the two tenants downstairs. You're not thinking about it. And so I was able to probably point out some of those and probably just really cheerlead him along. He had to pull his inspectors. I might give him some names. I might give him some contractors, but he had to take each step through that. And I think he has a beautiful piece of property now, looking over the water.
Now, Jason, he mentions, elevator there, fit. What were some of the things that kind of come to mind when you guys were walking along, kind of looking at this thing together? What were some things maybe that Brett brought up that you were going, "Oh, yeah," or even that elevator as an example? Maybe talk about that.
A couple of things. One of the things that Brett has said over the years, that he says frequently, is that fear and opportunity often feel exactly the same.
Yes.
And I've really come to find that to be truth. And, the nice thing, even though I have a successful business, and the business had been in business for more than 11 years, there's something nice about just leasing something where you're not making a commitment to it. If something went really bad, that you could bail out of it. And so making a commitment to purchasing real estate's a big deal. At least it was in my mind. And like I said, initially I was just looking to lease. So the elevator was one issue. It's not really an elevator. Most of the people that we serve are older, and so there are steps to get upstairs. And this was a lift that was put in so that if people needed to get upstairs, if they couldn't use the stairs, that we could get them up there. So it was an option. It was nice to have, but it wasn't a real elevator. And so that did bother me. It still bothers me, actually. Eventually, at one point, I do plan on putting a normal elevator in the place. That was one issue. Another issue I know that they really helped me was with parking. So the particular building that I purchased doesn't have a lot of parking. In fact, it has a reputation for not having much parking. And so I brought that concern to Brett and his team. They did some research and they really dug in. And what they found was that the building that I purchased had an easement for 6 dedicated parking spots that had never been claimed, that were not being used. So when I found that was the case, when I found that I knew that we would be able to purchase the building and have 6 dedicated spaces so that our clients would always be able to, they wouldn't have to walk 1.5 miles to get to the office. That was a big deal for me. But it was Brett and his team digging through the easement paperwork that really helped me identify that didn't need to be an issue. It was almost a deal breaker for me because I didn't want my clients to not be able to park. Let's
talk about that for just a second, because I know where your office is right now, and I know there are some other businesses in there that really it's a small sandbox. People are you catch an elbow every now and then, and those parking spots was there a debate over them? Was it a kind of moment of tension that you needed to work through, and how did that go?
It was a moment of tension that I came to realize after the fact. I didn't know it was going to be a moment of tension beforehand, but you're right. A lot of those businesses had been there for a long time. Here's the new guy moving in, and they're like, why is this guy putting up parking signs that say, Parker Financial clients only from
Right.
8 to 5? Well, actually, initially it didn't say from 8 to 5. And so there was some communication that took place so that, because we didn't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. We're trying to be a good tenant or a good good neighbor, if you will.
And I explained that this is where it was nice because he's kind of trying to be a friendly neighbor. And I said, Jason, all these other ones except for that one tenant, pretty much, I think it might not even be them. They're not the landlord. You own this building. One person owns that building. They're tenants. You do have that ability you're going to be here longer. And I think I helped you kind of like, okay, you're right. I mean, I think you were going that direction anyways, but it kind of helped like, no, you have you own this whole building here. And that was different than a tenant is having a spot.
The other thing that you brought up too was you said, Jason, if any of these other owners had easement for dedicated parking spots, that they would capture them, that they would use them. So, I mean, it was built into the easement. It was, it's been there since the 1990s. It's just nobody had put up signs to say. So we just put up signs saying, hey, and the other thing is, a lot of the people we serve are 60 plus years old. Right. And so we want access to our building to be easy. We don't want them to have to walk a long way in the rain to get to the
right.
And you're very nice because you also, after business hours, you allow it to be open to everybody. On weekends, you allow it to be open. I don't think you run out there.
Well, that was some of the negotiation that came into play. Yeah, sure. They asked if I would change it to say only parking from 8 to 5 when we're actually in the office, which I did because, if somebody wants to be down there on the weekends, of course, we want to be good neighbors. We want to help there. But it was one of those issues where it was a big deal to me. Mm-hmm. I probably made a lot of issues when buying the building a bigger deal than they needed to be. I tend to do that.
When you're your first go, I would imagine, that you would just naturally are going to go, hey, I want to get all these details right, though.
I always tell people,
because I didn't want to move again.
Right.
This is where I plan on being for the rest of my career, for the next 25 years. So
whenever we're looking at a building, I tell people, hey, you're going to have 100, maybe 1,000 reasons not to buy it when the deeper you look. But there's usually 3 to 5 good reasons to buy it.
Yeah.
This particular building that I bought it sits right on the water, and there's kind of a bulkhead. And there were some cracks showing in the bulkhead. So I told Brett beforehand, I said, Brett, this isn't good, man. Somebody needs to get out there.
I'm going to be in the water in a couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. So Brett has a guy, he had go out there and patch up the cracks in the bulkhead, which, the bulkhead serves this entire block of buildings. But every time I drive by now, I see that those nicely filled cracks in the bulkhead.
The sense of security that comes, yeah.
It's one of those things where, it was overkill. But again, the other thing I did was when my wife and I had bought a house earlier, the very first house we purchased, we didn't really research all of the neighbors around us. We didn't know who owned all of the land. And so when there was a commercial development that went in behind us, we were really thrown for a loop, and it was very disruptive to our house. So when I bought this building, man, I researched everything. I called all of the other owners. I did all kinds of research on the county, from the county standpoint. I wanted to know, what was there and what could go in.
And Jason, just admit, you bought your house too, and you did the same thing. And I love it because I always tell people, go check this. It's right in your contract. Here it is. And most people are okay. But then they're like, I don't know. I know I'm going to go spend $300,000, $500,000 on a house, but I'm not going to look at this. And because of your history, I love that because I knew if Jason said he was going to go do something, and then he called back, hey, this is a property over here that guy owns, and I met the farmer down there. And I thought that's what you need to do. And so not just in your business, you did that in your neighborhood.
So Brett, let's talk about that for a second. Okay, so right there in that moment when you're maybe advising Jason in that, or when you knew kind of where to turn to look at this parking issue, for the listeners out there that are like, oh, well, what 3, 5, what handful of things do people need to consider when they're looking at a commercial piece of real estate?
Well, I think, what are the leases? If you have a lease back, you got to know what the terms are, what the rents are, really what the rents are that you're able to get and the market will bring in.
Right. Now, what about this parking issue? Was that you? It sounded like you did some research to help with that issue, or Strategy Real Estate did.
We basically will get with a title company, but if you don't bring it up, they won't look at it. And so we get with them. We have their examiners take a look at that, and then Betsy, who works with me, she will. Or any of the brokers that work with me, we'll start to help investigate. Our job is to put that paperwork in front of him, and then we'll tell him, hey, you read it. This is what we understand. You can call the examiner. You can even call your escrow officer. But if you want deeper questions, then that's who you call, or call your attorney. And then if you have more questions, then we'll take it from there. And he was pretty satisfied, I think, talking to the title examiner. I think when we dealt with yours, you didn't have to go to an attorney. But, I think those are
some really good starting points. And of course,
it's really about, for me, it's about income, right? Everything's about income. And so I try to keep things simple. So I could look at all these things. I mean, I do want to make sure that the easements and somebody doesn't have their building sitting half on my lot, but that's all in the title paperwork. So it really comes down for me is like, what are you paying for the property and what will I make or what can I afford if I'm a business owner? And then, it's even as a business owner, it's nice because you can take losses in your building if you wanted to pay a bigger rent because your company was really good. Now, this will all kind of wash back and forth because everything flows through, but there's ways that you can do that. Being, if the business owner and their landlord are the same person but under other entities, they kind of have a good relationship, but they still have expectations. I mean, I'm pretty sure that like me, I have an office building, and then I have that. Well, Strategy expects the landlord of the house that I rent to Strategy needs to get its rent. Now, if we have a real bad month, I could say, I'll see you in a month. But generally, we try to make sure.
Now, let me ask you this, because I think one of the questions that we heard was, when do I know it's time to buy the building that I'm in? For instance, is that something that you would recommend kind of as soon as possible? If a business has been profitable, they feel like they can do it, is it a good strategy overall to try to purchase the building that
when you say the building you're in, it has to be for sale. And so I wouldn't probably approach my landlord and telling him I want to buy the building too quickly, because then he's going to go up 20%. So I guess the time would be is if the landlord put it on the market and your business seems to be making it and the rent seems to be that you're paying is fairly close to the mortgage. Well, and then your insurance and your taxes, and I think that could make sense.
It's generally a good strategy. If it makes sense for your business.
But when you said the building you're in, so I think, if you have any growth, then because a lot of times when you're moving, you're actually looking for more space.
Right.
And so when you say in, actually often it's like, even Jason was saying, I'm looking at more, he had a landlord situation happening too that was changing some things, I think, if I remember right. No, or am I wrong?
No.
Okay. So but sometimes the landlord will come and say, we're doing this, or taking your rent up. And that's what moves them. They're like, well, I only have 5 now. I plan to have 10 is my goal. Right. And I'm telling you, if you have only room for 5 people and you think you're going to grow your company, you're not. You need to have room for 10, just like church. If you want 50 people, just keep 50 chairs in there every Sunday. You won't have a church bigger than 50 people.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, even in that case, it's like the capacity of the building is actually less than the number of chairs you actually have in the space. Yeah. It's typically around 80%.
Yeah. And you generally want a few chairs open, right? Wherever you're at. Otherwise, the room feels crowded, and people feel like, oh, I'm taking the last spot.
Right. Now, Jason, let me come back to you for a minute, because I know part of the story, and I could hear at the outset when you mentioned, actually, I was kind of debating a couple of things. I mean, talk about some of the reservations that you have, some of the points of like, oh yeah, I really went home kind of thinking about this, or sharpening my pencil in a couple of these areas. What were a couple of those things that you really spent some time thinking through?
Well, when I talked to the guy that was selling the building, and he asked me if I had factored in the fact that the building had these established leases downstairs. So remember, I needed to grow. I mean, the building I was in was 1,200 square feet. There were 3 of us. I just hired another person. We were to 4, and we were on top of each other. We just didn't have enough space, and we needed more space. We were in 1,200 square feet. So I knew I needed to at least double it. And we ended up getting to 6 people right after we moved into the building. But so I knew that we needed 2,500 square feet. I was going out looking at places to lease in the community. And the 2 spots that I remember being really interested in, almost made an offer on to lease, were one was 3,000 square feet and the other one was 4,000 square feet. And interestingly, the lease that was they were offering on both of those spaces were about the same in terms of the monthly commitment. But one of them, I was going to have to spend a big chunk of money to renovate it, either that or modify the terms of the lease. But I was planning on this big chunk of money out of pocket. So when I met with the gentleman that was selling the building, he explained the tenants that were already in the building and the rents that they were making. And then I started crunching the numbers, and I looked at what the mortgage was going to be. And then I compared that mortgage to what my, the lease was going to be. What I realized was that the mortgage and the lease were going to be exactly the same.
Right.
And then when you factor in the fact that I had tenants paying income that were covering a
portion of that, right?
More than half of the mortgage, then I was like, well, wait a second. This all of a sudden turned into something like it became less risky because I knew what the alternative was. If I was going to lease something, yes, the lease gave me the freedom and flexibility to get out of it, at the end of 5 years. Usually most leases are 3 to 5 years.
Right.
I just really liked that idea of having this building that had some cash flow coming in where the mortgage was going to equal the leases. And it really became a no-brainer.
Right. It kind of became clear at that point. Now, you mentioned something, Brett, that I want to ask you about, and that's renovations. How do you think about renovations from a commercial real estate standpoint? Are there some rules to live by, or is it really a case-by-case basis?
Case by case, because it depends on what the donor is. What is it? Everybody dresses different the way they go to work, and so me, I often would just leave my offices. I bought a lot of houses, and I like that old rustic look. I even looked at the floors one time when I had my building for 15 years or so in Bremerton, and I don't think the floors were done in 50 years. It was a 1918 building, and it was a beautiful brick house. And I left the rustic floors and the old windows because I liked that. So I always watch my dollars, see. So
Yes.
I'm like, wait a second, how much is it to cost? Oh, I can deal with some scratches in the floor. If my client don't like me because there's scratches in the floor, let him go elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's the right attitude. It's just me. And it really comes down to, I try to not put too much money. When I put money into a property, if I put money, depending on the market, it's right before I sell it. And then I make sure I make it look real nice, because I know that I've put new gutters on my house 3 years later. I'm like, they're getting black again. Those were new gutters. And so don't get new gutters just to make them look white.
Well, so
especially in Kitsap, right? It rains a lot.
I invested a big chunk of money when we first moved into this building, because again, this is where I am planning on being for the next 25 to 30 years. And so I want a nice place where every day I look forward to going to work in the morning. And I do.
Nice.
But we spent a lot of money to make it nice for before we moved in. But I figured if we were going to do it, it makes a lot more sense to have somebody go and renovate this whole space before we have all of our desks and computers and everything in there and have that all moved around.
And one thing you got to add, and I agree, you put a nice fireplace in there. You opened it up, you paint it looks good. What I really care about, and I think you got too, was location. So every one of my offices that I've owned has had a view of the water. It was walking distance within a park. And so that's just important to me more than how the inside looks, because I'm looking at the value going, oh, that's a view property. Only so many of those in town. And one of them is a waterfront property, and so I like that. And yours is on the bulkhead, so that means there's water. And means you have limited property, and that what you're looking for is an office building that somebody later maybe might want to start their own dream.
Yeah, and I imagine the nature of the business too, foot traffic, location. I mean, foot traffic from a business standpoint might help. I want to ask you that question actually, Jason, because I mean, I kind of knowing where you are in Silverdale, was foot traffic at all part of the equation, or was like, no, I've got my clientele and I just really am looking for what fits?
Yeah, well, so what's interesting is I live here in Paulsbo, but my office is in Silverdale, and my office had been in Silverdale for 11 years. So we were established in Old Town Silverdale, and I just like the vibe down there. You've got little places to eat, and Monica's Waterfront Bakery is one of my favorites. So
Nice plug.
Shout
Great.
out to
There you
Monica
go.
there. Yeah, you guys will have to have her on the show.
Jason, really quick, just for listeners who might not be from this area or might not be, relatively know exactly where you're talking about. How far of a distance is Paulsbo to Silverdale?
It's 13 miles from my house to
13 miles. Okay. Okay.
And I don't mean to step on you, but we were looking together for it just came to me as we were thinking, just here, about a mile from your house.
Oh, yeah.
And there was that beautiful building with pillars.
Yeah.
We just didn't like the location. It was off the main drag,
We looked at
around
that
the back. And
one.
we're like, well, how could we make this into an area where we do share? We'll bring all the companies. We'll bring an accountant, and we do these things. And
Okay, so why didn't that fit? Let's talk about that for a second. Okay, so that wasn't quite a fit, and it was because of location. Talk more about that location. Why wasn't it a fit for you, Jace?
Well, it was a good fit. It was just there was some other conflicts that existed there where we couldn't move. We couldn't act on that particular building. So we liked it. Coming back to the building that I ended up buying, at one point Warner said to me, he said, "Hey, if you want a partner buying this building, I'd be interested in partnering with you." As soon as he said that,
Then it's a good one.
And then I was like, all right, I'm buying this thing without a partner involved, because I don't want to be dragging Warner around everywhere I go.
That's my closing line.
That is the stamp of approval right there.
Honestly,
hey, you want to do this together?
I was like, okay, I'm buying it on my own.
I called another client. They've been in a contract over in Port Orchard, which is about 17 miles from here, and just across the bay, though, of crow flies, maybe 2 miles, but that's from Silverdale. And basically I said, well, you've been in contract. They're a little frustrated. I said, you've been in contract for a year because I needed to do this deck and stuff. And I said, oh, man, if I could put every house under contract and just hold it under contract for like 5 years, I go, well, I give everybody $1,000 in this town, and you guys, I got a 10-year option on your property, and I get first option with my price, not your price at that point. So,
one thing I would say, I mean, if I was going to go into partnership with anybody, it would be Warner, and there's a good chance that he and I may end up in some type of partnership situation eventually with some type of business opportunity, because we're talking businesses all the time. But I'm also reminded of what Dave Ramsey always says. He says, the only ship that never sails is a partnership. And there's, partnerships always feel good when you've got other people involved at the onset, when anytime something's getting ready to start. But like any relationship, a partnership is a relationship, and you got to be thinking, how is that going to evolve 15, 20, 30 years from now? So I had that kind of going through the back of my mind, this idea. And I had previously started, before I started Parker Financial, I had started an investment firm with a couple of other guys. And we were all at different stages of life, and they're still really good friends of mine, but everybody had a different vision for how that thing was going to move forward. So I had a little bit of a taste for what it was like to try to make decisions in a group environment like that. And when you are somebody that just says, hey, this is the direction we're going to go, and we need to get it done now, you just want to be able to go, and you don't want to have everybody's consent to make that happen. And so while I was tempted and also encouraged by Warner's, his proposition to own that building with me, I was reminded that then I've got another person I've got to make decisions with. Everything that we do, somebody else has got to be involved with.
Oh, no, I would let you run it. I just said
he always says that, yeah.
Which is rare. Yeah.
Anybody wants to run anything, go ahead. I'll just give you a little. When you have a question, call me.
I did want to come back, Jason, though, because you were making a point about that location over the Paulsbo location, and kind of, though it was further from your house, you felt like
that other location probably would have happened had there not been this other issue. So in my business, and as a registered investment advisory firm, if there's any kind of conflict of interest that I just have to be very aware of, and that particular building was owned by one of my clients. So it's not that I didn't like the building and that I didn't want to buy it. It's just there were limitations on what I could do because of who owned it. And so I
even forgot why we didn't buy it. So
I mean, it was a beautiful building. I probably would have.
The pillars out front when I kind of felt like you were.
Yeah, but in my world, there's all these restrictions on what we can and can't do. And buying a building from somebody that is also a client of mine is, it was pushing. I actually called the regulators up and I said, hey, can we make this happen? And she said, no, that wouldn't be a good idea.
Too close to the line.
So it really wasn't a matter of the location or the building not being nice. It was just more of a just the industry that I'm in.
Gotcha.
Do you like your location better right now?
Well, I love the location that we settled on. Yeah. Right. I mean, I really love going to work every day.
I like it too.
Yeah. It's a great spot. It is a great spot. Brett, I have one more question as we start to kind of wrap things up here. It was a question that kind of came in from, we always put, open to questions on the website and everything. And one of the questions that came in is, how does commercial real estate fit into an overall real estate investment strategy? So, I mean, when you think about an overall real estate investment strategy, is commercial real estate definitely in there? Or how do you think
does McDonald's own the real estate, right? And the reason why McDonald's has done so well is they generally own all the real estate that their buildings sit on. The franchisor then, rents out the building in most cases. So if not the majority of the cases, I would have to double check. But I do know that real estate has tax benefits beyond what you know. I mean, you have a real profitable year and your roof needs to be done, but not quite done, but it's not raining in. You might wait till you have a real good profitable year. That'd be the year that you'd pull the trigger to do your $50,000 roof. So people go, well, taxes. And I'm like, if I didn't own the building, I wouldn't have the business. And so it's all part of the tax write-off and so you do and that roof is not 20 or 10,000 like at home or even 6. It's like a $50,000 roof. So often I think that's really one of the things that I see is taxes and then also building wealth. So in a sense, you have your business running money, and then later you can sell your business, and then you could own the real estate that that sits on. Then you could still have some income on there. You could be a partner in the thing, and then later you could sell the building, the business off. Then along following that, with whoever's the successor, and that you feel is stewarded it over that well or whatever they're bringing in there, then you'd sell them your real estate either on a contract, and you could get yourself, rather than having a CD later, you could say, today I could probably get a 5% carry back and get 20% down on the building and make my building. If my building was worth $1 million, now I got $2,000 or $4,000 coming in a
right.
month. So I'd be using that real estate as a business next to my business, and I think that's why I'd probably do it.
Gotcha.
Jason, I believe so much in the value of mentorship. And so it wasn't just Brett that, I spent time with another friend of mine, a local attorney here in town, a guy named Richard Tizano. Years ago, he told me, he said, Jason, as soon as you can buy your own building, buy it. Remember, I walk life with a lot of people where we're helping them make a transition into retirement. And retirement is all about cash flow. And now that I own commercial real estate and I see how it works, and I can project into the future and understand how that asset's going to work for our family as we someday head into retirement, I love commercial real estate. I've never personally bought investment real estate like Brett here has, partly because, he shares with me chapter 2 on owning residential property, but also a lot of the people that I've walked life with, a lot of people that we serve, like Brett said, you've got depreciation and tax benefits.
Right.
And you're obviously playing with leverage oftentimes when you're buying real estate because you're only putting maybe 10 or 20%, 25% down, and you've got an asset that's appreciating. So you've got a lot of benefits of real estate. And I like real estate, but what I like the most about it is the cash flow that it produces. So once you get that mortgage paid off, you've got this income. And ultimately what people want is freedom, right? And so the reason people are attracted to real estate is because of the freedom.
Gotcha. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, what a great perspective. And I love the financial aspect that you're bringing from your profession into your perspective there. Yeah, Brett, you had something else.
Chapter 1, you buy the property, it's honeymoon for a very short period. Chapter 2 is all the problems, and then you move something, you're like, oh, no, I didn't realize that the gutters need to be replaced. I'll just go back to that. Chapter 3 is you sell it.
Gotcha.
Chapter 2, though, that he talks about, when you get a bad tenant in there, and I've heard this from some of my clients, some of the people we serve, that can be a real headache for people, And so when you own commercial real estate, people are just in there from 8 to 5 usually every day, and it's a lot different relationship. You're not dealing with all the family drama that you do. So that experience that I've had with commercial real estate, I've told Brett that, that's one of the things that he and I have talked about, maybe is trying to find some more commercial real estate because just the dynamics of the relationships that you're managing are different. And I like that.
Wow. Right. And Brett, one of the things I love that you always say is, you love real estate so much. And one of the reasons is you can always sell your problems. Chapter 3. Chapter 3.
But chapter 2, it's,
that's not how he says it. He says, you can always sell your problems.
But chapter 2, let's just say that, the landlord really, it's like.
Well, Brett, any other final thoughts as we wrap up this episode on commercial real estate? Anything else?
I know we're short on time, but I just thank you, Jason, for coming in today. He's a great friend, and I trust him with my money, and I trust him with his counsel, and I really appreciate our friendship, and it's nice to have people that you can share your heart with, you can share your dreams with. And the great part about us is we think in different sides of the brain, but we really think so much alike on where we have the same goal, but kind of different ways of getting there. And I think a lot of life is that same goals. And the great part is I think we both are, I would say, kind of learners and teachers. And I think we'll continue to walk together as long as we both stay that way.
Yeah, Jason, thank you again. Now, if someone wanted to know more about Parker Financial, where could they find information?
Yeah, just look us up online. One last thing I'd like to say, though, Jason, there is Coach John Wooden is considered to be one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. And in his book, he said that you will become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so the fact that you guys are creating this mastermind, the fact that you're bringing together people to hear how they think and what they do is so incredibly powerful. The fact that I'm very selective with who I spend my time with. So Warner is somebody that I choose to spend time with because I know that I'm going to be growing. He's going to challenge me. I'm going to challenge him, and that's a good thing. The fact that I get to spend time with you, and you invited us all down to that retreat last week. life is all about relationships. It's all about who you spend your time with. And if you're not happy with your net worth or you're not doing well enough in life, look around at who you're spending your time with. Start spending time with people that are going to help you get to where you want to be. So
I love that, Jason. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for being here today. And look, for you out there listening, if you want to find out more information about Strategy Real Estate, Parker Financial, we'll have that on our website as well. That's strategyinvestment.net, strategyinvestment.net. We want to thank the Creative Consortium in Paulsbo. That's where we're sitting right now. They give us a studio space as well. And we will see you next time.